So the great Caitlin Johnstone has amazing instincts. So she put this out just yesterday in Consortium News. Israelis openly plan to resume, I don't know what that says, attacks. There you go, on Gaza. I knew it was something like that. Ynet reports that Israel is planning to resume its blockade and prevent reconstruction if all the bodies of the deceased captives are not returned, when Israel already knows that Hamas probably won't be able to locate all the bodies of deceased Israeli captives due to the intensity of the Israeli bombing campaign over the last 2 years. In a recent article titled, Israel Assesses Hamas May Not Be Able to Return All Remaining Dead Hostages, CNN reports that, quote, sources say the Israeli government is aware that Hamas may not know the location of or is unable to retrieve the remains of some of the 28 remaining deceased hostages. As noted by Shael Ben Ephraim, these two pieces of information would seem to indicate that Israel is planning to use the unreturned bodies as a pretext to break the ceasefire. Of course they are. Of course they are. And she put out this tweet, or quote tweeted it. Israeli defense minister explicitly says the slaughter is going to resume after they get the hostages back, says Israel Katz. Israel's great challenge after the phase of returning the hostages will be the destruction of all of Hamas's terror tunnels in Gaza directly by the IDF and through the international mechanism to be established under the leadership and supervision of the United States. This is the primary significance of implementing the agreed upon principle of demilitarizing Gaza and neutralizing Hamas of its weapons. I have instructed the IDF to prepare for carrying out the mission. Okay, so she also points out in the article, Hamas never agreed to that. That is not part of the agreement. There is no way to do that without force, and they know it. They are openly saying they plan to continue the campaign after a brief pause. And Netanyahu, if you listen to him here, if you know Israel speak, which is basically like parcel tongue, you can hear right here he's telling you that we're going to resume as soon as is diplomatically feasible.
I think we should understand that we're giving everybody a chance to have this done peacefully, something that will achieve all our war objectives without any further bloodshed. But if Hamas rejects your plan, Mr. President, or if they supposedly accept it and then basically do everything to counter it,
right? Then we say something like
then
they
Israel
broke
will
it.
finish the job.
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. He's planting right there
Right.
some kind of deniability.
Yeah.
They were look, when I used to do when I took over my first like big theater, I inherited a contract from the people who had run it before me that was like 10, 15 pages and really draconian. And I was like, no, I'm a cool guy, man. I'm not going to give people contracts like that. And I gave people a 3-page contract. Over the next 3 years, it grew back to 10 pages because I found out why you do contracts like that, because they're impossible not to break. So you always have leverage over the people you're doing the contract with. If they try to fuck you, you always have a clause that they violated. That's what he's doing. He's planting the premise for, oh, no, they broke the, I said it then. We wanted to do it the peaceful way, but, and of course, the bodies is such an obvious red herring. It is such a transparent way to just find an excuse to continue.
Yeah, I mean, look, they think the world's against them now. If they restart this genocide because the bodies were buried under rubble and they couldn't get it back to them, that's only going to alienate them more. Not that they give a fuck, but that will be the effect. Like the world
that's what he's setting up here.
Yeah.
By itself. This can be done the easy way, or it can be done the hard way. But it will be done. We prefer the easy way, but it has to be done.
Yeah, he never had any intention of honoring any kind of a ceasefire. He was planting the seeds there, and I promise you, as God is my witness, he's going to refer to this. He's going to refer to this when they really start ramping up the attacks again. I told them, we wanted to do it peacefully. They didn't listen. So sure enough, right before we went on air, this broke from Drop Site. In blatant violation of the ceasefire agreement, Israel has announced it will slash agreed aid shipments in half and keep the Rafah crossing closed after Hamas returned 4 of the 28 bodies of Israeli captives believed to be in Gaza. Hamas officials had repeatedly told mediators and said in interviews with Drop Site since early October that it would be impossible to locate and transfer all Israeli bodies within 72 hours of a ceasefire, given the scale of destruction. The ceasefire's humanitarian protocol explicitly established a joint operations room, including Egypt, Qatar, Turkey, the U.S., Israel, and Hamas, to manage such complications, with Hamas required to submit all information it holds on living and deceased captives. PIG deputy leader Mohammed al-Hindi, in an interview on October 1st with Al-Arabi, said, quote, they demand the handover of Israeli prisoners in 72 hours, but even if they were all together in one house or even buried in one grave, it would be impossible to hand them over in 72 hours. The situation is complicated, and everyone, Israel, America, and the mediators, knows it is complicated. Well, that's what they're counting on. According to Reuters, who cited 3 Israeli officials, the Rafah crossing will remain closed through Wednesday, and aid deliveries will be sharply reduced. And Israeli outlets are claiming Hamas violated the deal, with Channel 12 citing an official alleging Hamas is in severe breach by not releasing more bodies. Egypt has reportedly deployed teams in Gaza to help locate them. In a formal COGAT communication, Israel tied humanitarian aid directly to the return of bodies, a move amounting to collective punishment of a famine-stricken population. Quote, yesterday, Hamas violated the agreement. As a result, political leadership has decided to impose a number of sanctions related to the humanitarian agreement. Starting tomorrow, only half of the agreed number of trucks, 300, will be allowed to enter, all belonging to the UN and humanitarian NGOs. No fuel or gas will be allowed into the strip, except for limited humanitarian needs. Senior Hamas leader Musa Abu Marzouk told Drop Site's Jeremy Scahill last week that a prisoner exchange would be impossible while Israeli forces remain in Gaza's population centers. Quote, we don't know exactly where the prisoners are. Even the negotiators don't know their locations. There cannot be an exchange if Israeli forces remain. Marzouk warned that Israel's refusal to withdraw proves it does not want Trump's ceasefire plan to be implemented, do you think? As early as October 3rd, when Hamas first delivered its response to Trump's plan, Marzouk said on television that locating remains would take months after Israel destroyed and blocked off delivery of desperately needed heavy machinery. It would be impossible in 72 hours. So they knew this. And that's why they're relying on it, because it's a term that they knew could not possibly be met. And whereas like a normal country that is used to facing consequences for its actions, that is not full of deranged, self-justifying psychopaths, would say, well, you know, man, it's not going to be a good look if we start this up again. People seem pretty excited about the ceasefire. Israel is not that country. They're not a normal fucking country. You can see very clearly here. They're gonna inch by inch start up the campaign again. This is the beginning of it. And by definition, as he points out, that's a war crime. That's a war crime. You are not allowed to deny a civilian population food aid because you're having a disagreement with the military or governing force in that region. You're not, that is by definition a war crime. All of the leaders of Israel should be in The Hague. They should all be arrested. The idea that we're going to treat them like they're a legitimate political class, like they're legitimate leaders of a country, that would be like at the end of World War II. I mean, we kind of did rehabilitate the Nazis, but they at least had to take off the fucking uniforms and put on a business suit. With these guys, you're just gonna let the Nazi regime continue. Say, yeah, now let the healing begin.
Yeah, well, like I said before, it's just going to look really, really horrible if they restart this over bodies because they can't claim now that there are lives in the balance, that there are living hostages there who they have to get back to their families.
They're doing it.
Yeah,
They're
yeah. I
they're
mean,
doing it
it's
already.
just pretty. It is pretty brazen, and yeah, it's nothing that you would put past them. It's nothing that you would put past them, and it's just incredible to see. It's incredible to think that they feel like this is just going to come and go without any consequence. And if they restart this over this, I mean, that puts Donald Trump in a very, very bad position because you could tell he really enjoys the good press that comes with being perceived as the peacemaker. Now he could win the Nobel Prize next year, right?
Yeah, right.
According to NBC News, if this all goes well. And the other thing you always have to remember, I think it's very important, and Trump, kind of casually, sneakily brought up the idea of a pardon for Netanyahu in his Knesset speech.
right.
You have to understand that when Netanyahu says we could do this the easy way or the hard way, for Benjamin Netanyahu himself, the hard way is the easy way because the more
Keeps
the
him out
fighting
of
goes
jail.
on,
Yeah.
the more he gets to stay out of jail, right? And once this fighting ends and that corruption trial concludes, he is very likely going to be brought to justice, meaning thrown in prison, because Israel actually does jail corrupt leaders. They've done it before. And so, yeah, he has every personal incentive to keep this going. And you can see in that video, he kind of like stops and tries to figure out in real time a way to phrase this. Well, let's see. If they don't accept the agreement or, dead space. If they break the agreement in some way, meaning if we say they break the agreement in some way.
Exactly.
Right.
That's it.
As if we accuse them plausibly of having violated the agreement, then we reserve the right to go in. And politically, you have to wonder how that works out in Israel, since now that the hostage families have their hostages back, they may not mind going in and leveling Gaza. All polling suggests they never really did. Their only hesitation about it was that their hostages would be harmed, right? But now that the hostages are back, we'll see what politically that looks like inside Israel, which is connected to the question of what it looks like for Netanyahu and his sort of personal future there as a free man or a man who has to go to jail for corruption crimes. So once again, there's just so much here that can go sideways, and it already appears as though it may. The only hope to hold on to is that this is just going to be politically so devastating for Trump if after all this it falls apart again over the bodies that are buried under the rubble and can't be returned. So the only hope you have is that he says, no, you can't do this. You cannot do this. I'm sorry. You can't. It's not worth it. Will he or won't he? It's an open question. But if past is prologue, at the end of the day, they hold the cards in this. That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah. If you remember, Juliana Margulies wrote that batshit op-ed, and I actually wrote a response to it. These people are so crazy, they don't even realize the implications of the things they say. One of the big points she made in that article was how they had traded in a previous deal like one Israeli hostage per like 1,200 Palestinians or something. And she used it as an example of how valuable each Jewish life is because of the Holocaust. Well, the corollary of that is how little each Palestinian life is worth. That's what you're also saying. You're also saying you really don't value that is how much more highly you value Jewish lives than Palestinian lives. And that is why Netanyahu lost the country, a country that 82% of people in polling is in favor of ethnic cleansing at best, viciously hate Netanyahu. Why? Because to them, the fact that he jeopardized and lost the lives of all these hostages, that's terrible because Jewish lives are so valuable. You got all these Jewish lives out of harm's way. Is a country where 4/5 are in favor of ethnic cleansing gonna care if he goes in to finish the job? Doesn't look that way.
No, I don't think it's going to be a political problem for him inside Israel at all. It's going to be a political problem for Trump if after all of this it gets undone over this, which, look,
Miriam,
the other
you got to
thing-
buy more of my crypto.
yeah. Look, the other thing you have to remember is, like, do we really believe Israel came this far to give up now? Like, from their perspective, right? Like, do you really think that? And we know this whole thing about eliminating Hamas was bullshit. That wasn't their goal. It couldn't have been their goal.
Right.
They failed to do it. All the reporting says they were never even making progress on that front. This whole thing about, well, we have to go in and eliminate the tunnels. Oh, so you mean that aerial bombardment of 90% of the buildings in Gaza was a waste then because you didn't get to the tunnels, right?
Right.
Obviously, right? So we always knew that was bullshit. So what was the goal? The goal was to ethnically cleanse Gaza and claim it for themselves, and they came a long way to give up on that in their minds. And so, it's not a hopeful situation. It's a very, very difficult spot to be in, where you're happy for the respite and the peace that people are getting now, but of course you can't trust it. Of course you can't trust it. You'd be a fool to trust it.
Please clap.